We're talking golf on Proline TV, and that means we welcome in Mr. Brady Cannon from Las Vegas. Brady, good to talk to you.
Hey, good to be back here with you, Greg. And we make our way a little closer to your neck of the woods. The Florida Swing kicks off. 6 more tournaments, 45 days until that first major championship of the year. I think the march towards Augusta is officially underway as we hit Palm Beach Gardens, Florida here.
Yeah, this is when you really know things are getting serious. We've got 2 blockbusters right after this. The Players, first off, though, Bay Hill, a signature event. So, yeah, it's going to be really cool. And even though we only have, I believe, the 17th, that's the highest, the 17th ranked player, we do have the 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th, and 22nd ranked player. And a bunch of other players that actually make this field tougher than last week's. No question about that. And it's a much, much tougher golf course, even though, what have you noticed on the course itself, if anything, Brady, considering the scoring is starting to get a lot easier here over the last 4 years?
Well, I tell you, there's one massive difference, and that's let's see. If you look at the last 15 years, the last 13 editions, or the 13 prior to the last 2 years, I should say, the average winning score was less than 9.5 under par. Okay, and then in 2023, Chris Kirk went to 14 under, and last year Austin Eckroat went to 17 under. Well, the major difference, or the major reason, is because they turned this into a par 71. It used to be a par 70. There's a hole on the back side that used to be an extremely difficult par 4. It was over 500 yards. They added 20 yards to it, and now it's a relatively gettable par 5. So that's almost 4 shots difference, just, fundamentally, right? So you're looking at going from roughly 9.5 under par to an average of the last couple of years of around 15.5 under par. And coincidentally, that is exactly what the number is out here in Las Vegas as far as the winning score proposition bet, 268.5. You can go under or over that, which equates to 15.5 under par. So that's probably the biggest reason. Maybe there's been a little bit of a lack of wind the last few years, but really, again, the biggest reason is because they're giving the players an extra stroke here to deal with.
Well, that makes an awful lot of sense. But yeah, this is still, you're going to have a lot of water. You're going to have a lot of bunkers, similar to last week, a lot of water, a lot of bunkers. But I mean, this is completely different when you're talking about the fairways. You better hit the ball straight. Got to be a good scrambler. And I'm going to also tell you, so I got this from Jan Stevenson, Hall of Fame golfer. It was either last year she was on when we were previewing this event, or the year before. And she said that you really want to take a look at the golfers that are teeing it off late, early. And I wasn't sure why. And she says a lot of that has to do, now again, still the way I'm sure there's a little bit more detail to it, but bottom line is, it like you said, it's usually windy, and it usually gets windy later in the day.
Right.
And I guess her point is even though it'll get a little bit windier the day on Thursday, Friday is cut day. And you're going to get, a little bit more of an advantage ending your first 2 rounds early and letting everybody else maybe struggle, a little bit more pressure to get to the weekend. So it makes a little bit of sense. And hey, Hall of Famers telling me that keep an eye on that. I'm obviously going to keep an eye on that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it definitely makes a ton of sense. The only fly in the ointment this year is that the forecast is not calling for much wind. And we've had a little bit of rain in the area as well. I think it was yesterday, Monday, that it definitely rained in the Palm Beach Gardens, Florida area. They may have gotten a little bit of moisture overnight or even into Tuesday as well. I'm not positive, but the golf course has been softened up by a little bit of precipitation and then no real wind in the forecast. I think Sunday was maybe the heaviest day at roughly 10 miles an hour. Now, I know we're about, I believe, 7 miles from the coast here. So there's no doubt about it. You can get those breezes off of the ocean, and you could possibly get 15 to 20 mile an hour gusts or something like that. But again, what the forecast is calling for is not much of anything, and I think that plays into that winning score proposition as well.
Yeah.
Not only have we turned one hole into a par five, but I think the expectations are that the conditions, the weather elements, are not going to be too difficult, and the rain making things a little bit easier as far as balls staying in the fairways, balls staying on the greens, easier to to hold the ball on those putting surfaces and things like that. So the players may be catching a little bit of a break here, but by and large, I would totally agree that you're probably, I think, a little bit better off finishing early on cut day rather than late.
Yeah, it is amazing because, like you said, when you look at the weather forecast, you could look at like the 15-day forecast, and the only 4 days where you see single-digit wins are Thursday through Sunday of this event.
Yeah, right,
So
right.
I don't know.
Well, and that also kind of speaks to the fact that it could change in any minute, right?
That's
So
true.
you can't necessarily put all your eggs in that weather forecast basket, but for right now, it looks like it's going to be pretty benign out here this week at the Cognizant Classic.
It does. So let's get to some other key trends to keep an eye on. The fact that most of the winners here, 10 out of the 18, we've had 18 events, were international players, even though the last 2 were American. You also have the average number of appearances before winning here is only 3.9. So now look, there's only been 18. So I'm sure that comes into a little bit. But if you look at it, there's been a lot of players that have won here on their second appearance. Matter of fact, I think 3 out of the last 6 years. And I think in total, I see about six or 7 out of the 18 in their second appearance. Eckroat was making his second appearance. Ernie Els is the only player to win here in his first appearance, and he did it a year after the tournament began. So
you've had a lot of guys finish like runner-up or really good tournaments in their debut year too. I think Daniel Berger finished runner-up in his first year.
Wow. Okay. Yes, and that was the playoff loss to who did he lose?
Audric Harrington, maybe.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah,
that was it.
Yeah.
The average world ranking is 111. And that does include the last few years, not just something that changed because of the scoring. Eckroat was 101st in the world last year, and he's the defending champ. So you get a lot of these guys. Matter of fact, 7 of the 18 winners, PGA Tour maiden winners. So you're going to get these guys, as tough as the golf course is, you're going to get these players that are highly ranked or lowly ranked and have never won before. It's just going to happen. And that makes it a little bit more difficult, of course, to handicap.
No doubt about it. And I think that is kind of telling us, and you look at, 18 years in existence that it's been held at this golf course formerly the Honda Classic. And back in the day, we used to have some pretty serious fields here. You mentioned Ernie Els, Rory McIlroy's won here before, Gary Woodland, Ricky Fowler, Justin Thomas, Padraig Harrington has actually won twice here before. But it seemed like the golf season would kind of officially kick in with the Honda Classic, and all these European Tour players would show up, and some of the guys, especially coming from Europe, would not travel all the way to the West Coast to participate in the West Coast swing. They'd make their first start here in Florida, and you'd get some really good fields. Now, because like you talked about at the beginning of the show, next week we've got Bay Hill, which is a signature event. And then the following week, we've got the Players. A lot of guys are waiting to make their appearance, in those events rather than showing up here. So the quality of the field, I think, has come down quite a bit. I don't know if it's been the last 10 years, but certainly the last 5, 6, 7 years, as far as I can recall. And so I think that contributes to the randomness as well, while you're getting guys that are ranked 100th in the world. And I really went kind of that direction with my card this week, Greg. I took 2 shorter shots, and I took 5 guys that are long bombs because, we saw it last week in Mexico, and not that there's correlation there. I'm just saying when you don't have a ton of star power in the field, anything can happen.
Yeah. And for live bettors, we told you last week, and it almost came true again, where the leader of the event after the first round, going into after round 2 and round 3, before Sunday had won the event. So it was a crazy stat. And we were like, well, that's got to end sometime. Well, it almost didn't.
Well,
Because
and it did, like, quite randomly. I mean, the craziest bounce that Campbell got. I mean, it took something that freak of nature, to avoid that trend continuing.
Yeah. So this week, it's pretty similar in a way. No, you don't have to worry about first round, because again, this is kind of what Jan was saying, because we've seen players get off to a bad start the one day and they're able to come back from way back after the first day and make a run and win these events. 4 of the last 6 winners started 4 shots or back, or I should say 4 shots back or more. And that includes 6 shots back and 7 shots back. So
in the final round?
No, after the first round.
Okay.
There've only been 2 winners that have ever led after the first round that have won. Matter of fact, only 2 have only led in the last 14 and won after the second round. So you don't have to lead the event after the weekend, but you do have a shot after day 1 where maybe you're going to take a look at some players that might be good plays. And again, maybe it's not the win necessarily, but just take a look at them. Maybe it is the players that are teeing up in the morning. Again, whatever way you want to look at it, it is a trend that has made sense for whatever reason. But this is also very interesting. After the third round, 17 of the 18 started the final round in either first or second. Wow. 17 of 18. Sung Jae Im is the only winner who started outside the top 2. And that was 5th place in 2020, 3 shots back. Sepp Straka is the only winner who started 5 shots back or more in the final round. He was 5 shots back in 2022 while he was in 2nd place. So there you go. Be patient. Second round, you might be able to hit some really bigger long shots. Again, just like we're going to go over some long shots anyway to start the thing. But if you're not up there on the weekends, I'm not sure I'd worry about investing on any long shots unless they're like Sepp Straka and they're in 2nd place.
Well, that's really interesting, because I think the first half of what you're talking about there, that you don't have necessarily many first round leaders or second round leaders that go on to win. I think what that's telling us is not only the volatility and the severity of the weather, but also the difficulty of the golf course, meaning it's hard to hang on here. It's not a birdie fest where you get out in front and you just keep running without any mistakes. There are going to be mistakes. There are going to be bogeys. There is going to be weather. So I think the first part of what you're talking about makes a ton of sense. The second part, then you say, when you go into the final round, you better be in first or second, or you're not likely to win. That's odd, because of this golf course being so difficult and some of the weather elements that come into play, it's interesting that hasn't been more volatile as well. Yeah. So I think that one's tough to explain. The first half makes a ton of sense. The second half, I don't have an answer.
Yeah. So anyway, keep that in mind for you live bettors out there. Let's go right to it. Let me pop up on the screen, first of all, our picks, and then we're going to take a look at the odds and go through everything here. So Brady, you've got the outrights, you've got the top 20 finish, and you also have head-to-head. Only one of them, Pendrith over Berger. That's real surprising. Matter of fact, Pendrith is favored here over Berger. Berger's my top choice. So, but again, we know why Berger is a really good player here. Pendrith, we've talked about him repeatedly this year as a player that really needs to take that next step. He needs to be able to show everybody that, top 30s, that's nice, that's good, and that's where he is right now, even though he's not coming off a good effort last time out. But kind of overdue to see Taylor Pendrith play well. He doesn't have a great history here, but his overall scoring is under par, which is pretty good when you compare a lot of other players here and how if they're here for 3 trips like Pendrith, they're over par.
Right. And we talked a bit about Taylor Pendrith on our season preview show that we did prior to Pebble Beach. And, I think all 3 of us on that show agreed that Taylor Pendrith was a guy that was an up and comer in a big way. Got his first PGA Tour victory last May at the CJ Cup, the Byron Nelson at TPC Craig Ranch. He's played in 5 tournaments this season so far, has not yet missed a cut, and already has 2 top 10 finishes. I think this guy is really becoming a player to be reckoned with. He's already ranked 40th in the world. He's ascended to the 40th best player in the world, and he has that lethal combination, I mean, that we all would die for, of being able to hit the ball a mile and be a nails putter as well. He's a great putter, has a great short game, and hits it really far, which is, a pretty darn good formula to have towards winning on the PGA Tour. Now, a lot of guys with this golf course, there's been there's an emphasis on accuracy here. These fairways are narrow. The work off the tee is some of the hardest work you'll find. It's one of the harder golf courses on the PGA Tour, period. But the strokes gained off the tee or lack thereof, it's one of the harder courses on the circuit to really have success off the tee. And you'll see a lot of these guys clubbing down, and you're probably going to see Taylor Pendrith hit a lot of 3-woods this week to try and find fairways and be more accurate and that type of thing. He is second on the PGA Tour in ball striking, which is a combination of total driving and greens in regulation. So I love the fact that he is really strong off the tee when we're playing a golf course like PGA National, the champion course at PGA National. And Daniel Berger, I think coming in, we knew there was going to be love for this guy. Went to Florida State. He's been tremendous in the state of Florida. He's been tremendous at this golf tournament. And I'm not saying he's not going to be good once again. I think he's peaking at the right time. He comes off of a runner-up finish at the Phoenix Open, another course with Bermuda grass greens where he's done really, really well in the past. So he's not necessarily a fade for me. I just think that Pendrith is kind of a sneaky play here this week, whereas Berger is kind of at the forefront of everybody's minds. He's one of the favorites here. He's going to be extremely popular as far as choices in all the golf betting, spaces this week. And I don't think that's going to be the case for Pendrith, but yet the odds makers have him as a favorite. And I think that's telling as well. Pendrith happens to be one of my choices for an outright win this week because of his skill set and because of his, what's the right word for it? Because of what I think the future holds for this guy. I think he is a burgeoning star. And maybe that star is crowned this week with his second PGA Tour victory. I wouldn't be surprised. So, he was a guy I not only played for an outright win, but I thought this was an interesting head-to-head matchup pick that I kind of fell in love with.
Yeah, and we see the favorites here. Your top overall pick being Shane Lowry, who has done everything here except win.
Right.
He's made all 7 cuts, 3 of those top 5s. One of those was a runner-up. And here's the interesting thing. I always find these things so interesting that because you just never think that these things are the case with these really big-time players. But Shane Lowry has just 1 win since the Open Championship in 2019, and he's never won a regular full field PGA event on American soil. I mean, that is just so weird to think about.
Yeah, I mean, the last quote unquote win that he has was last year at the Zurich Classic when, it's a team event, a 2-person team event when he won with Rory McIlroy. Speaking of McIlroy, he just finished runner-up to McIlroy at Pebble Beach a few weeks ago. And I like that. And I'm with you. The guy, like you say, hasn't won since the Open Championship. But what I couldn't get away from is how well he plays on the Florida golf courses. He is number 1 in this field over the last 36 rounds. He is number 1 in this field on the Florida swing. And we're talking about PGA National, the Cognizant, Bay Hill, TPC Sawgrass for the players, and then also Innisbrook where they play the Valspar. He's had more success on that 4-course swing than anybody else in this field. And he's kind of one of those guys I was talking about where you didn't used to see him a lot on the West Coast swing, and he would start his season close to home, lives in Jupiter, Florida. He's very familiar with this golf course, the Bermuda grass surfaces. It just feels like it's more of his comfort zone. He's also talked about the more difficult the test, the more motivated he is. And I think you've seen that throughout his career. He's played really, really well on difficult golf courses. Oakmont, some people consider the hardest golf course in the world, when he was second to Dustin Johnson at the US Open. Kiowa, when he did really well at the PGA Championship, when Mickelson won a handful of years ago, done well on these very difficult Florida swing golf courses. So I just couldn't ignore, and his history here, the last few years, he's finished second, fifth, and fourth. And I'm with you, Greg. I don't know if he's going to win, but he's probably going to be top 5 again. and if he is, that means he has a good chance to win. So, like I talked about, I went with mostly longer shots this week. But as far as the short shots, Taylor Pendrith, who lives right here in Palm Beach Gardens, obviously very familiar with the course, and another Florida resident in Shane Lowry at 20-1. I took a stab with both of those two guys, the shortest shots on my card.
Yeah, the bottom line is Shane Lowry just keeps playing here over his career, and it'd be a big surprise if he doesn't win. So,
another thing, Greg, and I'm sorry to interrupt you. You talk about trends, and you do a great job pointing those out each and every week. One of the big trends here is how well British Open winners have done in the past. Ernie Els, Padraig Harrington, Rory McIlroy. I could go on with other guys that have. Ricky Fowler has done tremendous at the British Open in the past. So Lowry, another guy that's not only won a British Open, but done very well at the Open Championship in the past. And that has, we've seen crossover success at the Cognizant.
Okay. So in this next group, a couple of my picks have popped up: Minwoo Lee and Davis Thompson. And so with Minwoo, he's played here twice. Both times he's been solid, runner-up last year. He's made 12 straight cuts worldwide. And he has a couple of top 20s in his 3 PGA starts so far this year, making every cut, of course. So I think he's a really good play here. He's got the international deal as well. So yeah, I like Minwoo. And Thompson, I mentioned this before a month or so ago that, I had played Thompson last year on my one and done contest, and he came in second or something, I think. And in the very next week, I bet him again, couldn't get him on the one and dones, of course, and he won. And so anytime you win on a player, you're going to follow that player and see if how's he doing the next time he might be in that kind of zone. And I think he's back. He struggled a little bit lately, maybe. And it's going to happen when you're a young kid, you win for the first time. It could happen, but he's starting to play better now. He's trending in the right direction. He's a solid 6 under par last year in his first trip here. So apparently he likes the golf course. And I just felt maybe this is the right time for Davis Thompson to go with him again. So Mitchell is also a good pick, a former champion. McCarthy, I was surprised McCarthy doesn't play better here. I thought this would be a really good golf course for him. But he's somebody that could actually be sneaky good this week as well. But Thompson and Minwoo were 2 of my top picks.
Well, both McCarthy and Thompson did very, very well a few weeks ago at Torrey Pines when it was the Genesis Invitational. I thought Thompson might be a real threat to win that thing, but I think he had a poor round on the final day on Sunday, if I recall. But he was going along really nicely in that championship. And it does make some sense that he's done well here because this guy is out of Sea Island where they play the RSM Classic. I think he lives down there. He at least trains down there and practices at Sea Island as a number, 20 some different tour pros either live there or practice there or both. And Davis Thompson is one of those guys. And Sea Island is where they play the RSM is a shorter coastal location with wall-to-wall Bermuda grass, which is exactly what we have here in Palm Beach Gardens. Not completely coastal, but not that far away, but similar if you follow me here. So it makes some sense that he's played well here. And he's another guy, Greg, that I think kind of fits the profile of Taylor Pendrith, that is an up-and-coming star as well. He's really starting to trend in the right direction. And then Minwoo Lee, you were asking me earlier about the courses that I used as far as similar courses this week. One of them was the Renaissance Club where they play the Scottish Open every year. And Min Woo Lee, by the way, a former winner of that golf tournament.
That's right.
So yeah, why not? And a big hitter. He's kind of like Pendrith, where he will certainly club down, I'm sure, in favor of accuracy. But ball striking is probably the biggest thing here, and I think it's maybe not only true for this tournament, Greg, but probably throughout the entire Florida swing. It is so much about ball striking for these next 4 weeks.
And McCarthy is on a 9 straight cut string. With 7 top 35s, 2 top 10s, 1 top 5. So he's trending really well, but he's missed 5 of 7 cuts here, a combined 17 over par. He does have a top 5 though. So, again, he's a tricky play. I think he might be a pretty good play actually.
The only thing I would say, and what I chalk up to his lack of success around here, is he is typically so reliant on his short game. I mean, some people might argue that he is the very best putter in the world. He is that good with the flat stick. And like I said, this is so ball striking heavy. It's such an emphasis on ball striking. Maybe that's not exactly the strong point of McCarthy's game, whereas the short game is. And maybe that's led to his lack of success. But I think at the same time, he has enough talent where he can probably do pretty well just about anywhere.
And he's never won a PGA Tour event yet.
Right. He's been awful close. I mean, he was in the final pairing at Torrey Pines with Patrick Rogers, right? I mean, it was like you knew both of those guys weren't going to win. They're both still seeking their first PGA Tour victory.
Okay. Now, on this board, believe it or not, combined, we have 4 picks. And believe it or not, the only one we don't have is the biggest superstar of them all, Jordan Spieth.
Yeah.
But you could probably believe that. He's still kind of finding his way. But I have Griffin, Young, and Smalley. You have Spawn, and I thought it was apropos that I took Smalley because you had Smalley last week. I had Nikolai Højgaard last week, and now we've kind of switched.
Yeah.
So anyway. Yeah, I look. Griffin's played here twice, has 1 top 25, nothing special or anything like that. But I he's just kind of due, and I can see that this might be, a pretty decent week for him coming off that 4th place finish. Cam Young has played here twice. He's been good both times. 4th last year. I think he's like totally overdue. I think his game is starting to round back at the form. Not perfect, but he's getting there. And then obviously Smalley, you liked him last week for a good reason. You had another really solid finish. He finished 10th in his last 5 events. 4 of those are top 25s. And he also, by the way, was 10th at the Scottish Open in 2022, 16th at Sony this year in a couple of your correlated courses. And he did improve 5 strokes from his first appearance here to his second appearance here. I think they're all good plays. And again, this just show you how tough it is to handicap and try to pick one winner because there's so many of these guys in this range that any of these guys can win, including your pick, JJ Spawn.
Yeah, no, I can't argue with any of those selections. Ben Griffin, Cameron Young, or Alex Smalley. I think they all make a bunch of sense here. And Spawn really just jumped out at me. He's got great history on the correlated courses. Narashino Country Club, where they play the Zozo, was one of the courses I used, and he's finished 6th there twice. Just finished 3rd at the Sony Open to kick off 2025, where he's also finished 12th. He's done very, very well in the past at Silverado and Napa. That's another course. He's got a top 10. He's got a 9th and 11th, a top 20. So he's done extremely well at the correlated courses. And JJ Spawn, I mean, he has really absolutely made his living in being a ball striker. That's almost really all he is. And that's probably why he hasn't been more successful in his PGA Tour career, because outside of ball striking is where he lacks. But he is number 1 in this field over the last 36 holes, or over the last 36 rounds, rather. He is number 1 in this field for strokes gained ball striking. And that's where I went with JJ Spawn. And by the way, that number there, it looks like you're using DraftKings. That's an awful number. I wouldn't bet JJ Spawn at 45-1. I got him at 70 out here in Las Vegas, which is a pretty decent number. I've seen.
When'd you get that?
That's at Circa.
No, when?
Oh, it was Monday.
Monday. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw some pretty significant changes from Monday to today because there's so many players in that zone
Yeah.
that a few guys had to move up and move down. It's just, especially move
Sure.
down.
Sure. I would say JJ Spawn at less than 55 is not a great bet.
Okay.
Yeah, I would probably want him at least 60. And I was able to get 70, which I was comfortable with. And if it was much less than that, I probably wouldn't have landed. I mean, he is a bit of a long shot. He's got one PGA Tour win, but he's absolutely a ball striker, which makes sense here. He's been playing well. He works at the correlated courses. So we took a shot with him.
Okay. Let's move on down to, let's see. Let's get to the next board here. We've got the defending champ. Billy Horschel's interesting because he's made 7 of 8 cuts, Florida boy, 5 top 20s out of the 7 cuts, 3 top 10s, 1 top 5. He has missed his last 2 cuts though, so he's not on form, but he could be a nice little slippery play. Ricky Fowler. Again, I think his game is slowly starting to get back into shape. He's made 10 of 12 cuts here, including a runner-up and a win. So he's at 50. Novak and Rogers are at 50. And Novak made my list. And he's another one of these players that we both know at some point is probably going to get a win. He was 9th here last year. That's his best showing. And he has 3 top 15s in his last 4 PGA events, including a top 5. So another good list.
I think all those guys are really interesting. Billy Horschel, a Florida Gator. Bermuda grass is definitely his preferred surface. He's a guy that typically does very, very well in the Florida swing because he's very familiar with not only the area, but all these golf courses. You mentioned it. He's had great success here in the past. He definitely, I'm not going to argue with anybody that wants to take Billy Horschel here. I nearly landed on Ricky Fowler. But what kept me off of him was just his recent form. He just really hasn't been.
He's up and down.
Striking. Yeah.
He's up and down. Yeah.
And the ball striking really hasn't been there as of late. He can walk onto this property and probably flip a switch and all of a sudden, play really well because he's had great success here in the past, including a win. But I just left him off because there was a few things that didn't suit my fancy for him this week. And really the same with Andrew Novak. I was like, is the Honda Classic really going to be the spot where he gets his first victory? He's kind of like JJ Spawn in the sense that he is absolute 100% ball striking, which makes a ton of sense for this course. And that's really what kind of led me to him. And you mentioned the form has been good, but I just wasn't ready to say he's going to get it done this week. And I could be dead wrong, but no, I looked at all 3 of those guys.
Patrick Rogers, by the way, he's played here 8 times, 1 top 25, and a collective 45 over par. So that's a little bit too far for me to invest in Patrick Rogers this week. Michael Kim continues to play good golf. Back-to-back 13th place finishes. He also, sneaked in another good round. We're up in that mix. He's missed 4 of 6 cuts, though, on this golf course. It hasn't been a very good golf course for him. Greiserman seems to be moving back in the right direction. Vegas, you never know when he's going to hit. He's another guy to definitely keep an eye on. He's made 10 of 11 cuts here with 6 top 30s and 1 top 5. And even Harry Hall and Gary Woodland, you want to keep an eye on. Hall has improved 5 shots from his first to his second appearance here. Meanwhile, Gary Woodland, we've talked a lot about him and wondering if he's going to strike it this year. Well, this is a good golf course for him. He's made 9 of 10 cuts, including a runner-up finish. He's coming off a missed cut at Genesis, but before that, we know he was playing pretty well.
Yeah, I nearly landed on Gary Woodland. I took a long, hard look at him, and I've been on him 3 times already this season, and he's done extremely well at this golf course in the past, but I did not end up getting there with Woodland. I did on Johnny Vegas, though. You mentioned it. He's played here 10 times. He's only missed 1 cut. 6 times he's finished in the top 30. 4th place being his best ever finish in 2017. He's also got a top 10 at Silverado where he's made 5 of 6 cuts. He's got an 11th place finish at the Zozo. That just came last October. and he's a little bit like Taylor Pendrith, where, he is a fantastic driver of the golf ball. That's really been the strong suit of Johnny Vegas's career and has led him to what I think is now 4 PGA Tour wins over the course of his career. He is 6th in this field for strokes gained ball striking over the last 36 rounds, 10th for strokes gained approach, 18th for strokes gained off the tee, and he's 28th for hole proximity from 175 to 200 yards. And hole proximity is interesting this week. Over 65% of the approach shots this week are going to come from 125 to 200 yards. So I looked at guys within that window and how good are they at knocking the ball stiff. And Johnny Vegas from 175 to 200, one of the best in the field. Now, if you look at the numbers, this golf course, PGA National, is one of, if not the hardest courses on the entire PGA Tour circuit for approach shots from 150 yards or more. So guys, yeah, and I don't know necessarily why it is, the wind, the water, the bunkers, a lot of different factors, but from 150 yards or more, this golf course is very difficult as far as getting the ball close or hitting greens in regulation. And I've got a couple guys on my card that really flourish in that area. And Johnny Vegas, not too shabby, from in that ballpark from 175 to 200, really good. And of course, as I mentioned, really strong off the tee and ball striking.
All right. Now, as we can see on this list, there's only one player in our collective lists. I really thought about Brian Harman.
Mm-hmm.
He's got that Scottish. He's got that Open Championship win with your correlated courses. And by the way, that was one of my. I've hit several major champions over the years, and he was. I think it might have been the last one I hit when he won that week. So I like Brian Harman. I like that fit. Obviously, brought up good times. But I didn't like the fact that he had played here so often and didn't have enough success here. And that just goes against a lot of the trends, even though he's trending in the right direction again. So that's why I was really close. He was my 11th guy or 12th. I had 2 guys. He was one of them. I have another one later on. But you also went with, like I said before, you went with Nicolai Højgaard. We talked about him last week when I made him my pick. And what did he do? He went out and played even better than he had in the previous weeks, which is exactly what we wanted to do. Now, he doesn't have a lot of experience here, but get this. In his first appearance last year, or in 2022, he missed the cut, and he was 8 over par. Normally, there's no way I'm taking that guy. And in his second appearance at the golf course, when he's missed the cut, got 8 over par, never will I do that. But this is the perfect golf course to do it because, as we said, you don't have to have prior success here. Matter of fact, last year's winner, Austin Eckroat, was 3 over par with a missed cut the year before he won. And I could go down the list of several other players that have had really bad appearances in their first appearance. And then I think Mitchell was another one. I think I might even have that somewhere here. Keith Mitchell had a really bad first appearance. Oh, he missed the cut and was 9 over par the year before he won in his only first appearance. So that's very similar to Nicolai Højgaard at 8 over par. So I wouldn't worry about that this particular week. And he sure is trending in the right direction.
Yeah, I hope that plays out again. And I think that speaks to the difficulty of the golf course. I think you'll also see that at another very difficult course, TPC Sawgrass, where they play the Players' Championship coming up. I mean, you look at past winners like Ricky Fowler and Sergio Garcia and, even Tiger and Matt Kuchar. I think Ricky Fowler's missed like 4 cuts at the Players' Championship. I mean, it's like
volatile.
Totally
it's
so volatile. Yeah. It's feast or famine.
Yes.
It's like they're finishing top 10 or they're shooting 85. I mean, and it's because the course is tough. And I think that's very similar here. This course is tough. And Nicolai Højgaard, 6th on tour in ball striking. Over the last 36 rounds, he's 5th in this field for strokes gained approach, 2nd in hole proximity from 175 to 200 yards, and 22nd from 125 to 150. has a 6th place finish at the Scottish Open. That was in 2023. And he followed that up with a 23rd place finish at Royal Liverpool, where Brian Harman won that year. Royal Liverpool, one of my correlated courses, narrow fairways, accuracy based, ball striking heavy, that type of thing. So Højgaard with a nice run there on a couple of courses that I think make sense. The Renaissance Club, where he finished 6th at the Scottish, and then just a week later finished 23rd at Royal Liverpool. And then you talked about it, a real nice finish last week with an 8th place finish at the Mexico Open at Vedanta, where, by the way, he finished 2nd in that field for greens and regulation.
I was a little bit disappointed in the fact that he gets off to a really good start in the first 6 or 7 holes and then just levels off. It was like, come on, man. You had a whole 10 or 11 holes. All you had to do is improve 3 or 4 shots on a pretty easy golf course. That was a very weird Sunday we'd not talk about. It was like, it was there for the taking.
For a lot of guys.
Yes,
for
and
Smalley,
nobody
for
would
Aaron
go low.
Rai, for Højgaard, for Griffin. Yeah, it was really interesting too. Kind of along the same lines here. The winning score proposition bet at the Westgate for last week was 20.5 under par.
Wow.
Okay. Well, Podgitar started Sunday morning at 20 under par.
Yeah, you would have thought he would have obliterated.
And he finished at 20 under par. I mean, it's crazy. The odds makers nailed it. And, unbelievably so, because you would have, I predicted, after it was the day before, I believe, I think it was on Saturday night or something. I was on Sports Grid. And I thought the winning score, I thought you needed to get to 24. They didn't even sniff 24.
Incredible. I know.
Yeah, crazy.
That's why I could not believe. It's driving me nuts that no one was making a move when those leaders were just doing nothing.
Yeah.
All right. Now, here's an interesting guy, Ryan Gerard. Now, I've actually seen his odds, like you said, on another one of my sports books, go lower than this. And I was interested in him on Monday when I saw his odds were about 100 to 1. I go, hey, maybe this guy is not a bad a play here as a long shot.
Well, and Kevin Roy's a guy I looked at too.
Oh, you did?
Both of them. Both of them.
Okay.
Yeah, both of them.
Yeah, because Gerard was 4th here in his only appearance a couple of years ago, and like you said, he's playing well. He had a KFT win last year, but again, his odds went from 100 to 1. You could get maybe 60 if you're lucky at sportsbooks. That went way down for me. Too much for me.
One very respected golf tipster in the UK, maybe more respected than anybody else in the world, Ben Coley, is on Ryan Gerard this week. So that'll drive his number down in a hurry.
There you go. Okay. So again, it made sense, but not at that number. All right. Now here is a player that we talked about early in the season, Echeverria. And Echeverria, look, same thing. Echeverria, Gerard, 100 to 1 on Monday. I like them both. Gerard goes down. I'm like, forget it. But Echeverria, I think, is, again, you picked him, so I don't have to worry about it. He's still at 100 to 1.
Yeah, you notice I didn't move any lines there in my selection.
Yeah, it is what it is, right? I guess that's what it tells us. So interesting. He chose not to play here. Play Mexico last week, an easier golf course that he was 24th at the year before. He took the week off, decided to come here. Now, interesting, because his first appearance here, it misses the cut, 10 over par. He comes back the next year, finishes 21st, 10 under par.
Yeah.
20 stroke difference. That is significant. And the guy's 100 to 1.
Well, what's interesting is he is 100 to 1, and he has more wins in the last 2 years than most guys in this field. This guy's a long shot, and he's also a proven winner on the PGA Tour, most recently at one of our correlated courses, the Zozo Championship, just a few months ago in October. He began the season at another one of our correlated courses, losing in a playoff to Nick Taylor at the Sony Open in Honolulu. So, that guy checks a couple of boxes right off the bat.
Absolutely.
What he's done recently with a win at the Zozo, a runner-up at the Sony, both correlated courses for us this week. He's another Florida resident who's played here many times, even in his junior golf career. So he's very familiar with this course. Like you say, finished 21st last year. And I talk about that magic number of 150 yards or more. this golf course being one of, if not the very most difficult on tour for approach shots of that distance. He is second. Over the last 36 rounds, he is second in this field for hole proximity from 150 to 175 yards. Also 13th for good drives gained. He's very accurate off the tee, and he's a very good putter. 16th for strokes gained putting on Bermuda grass. Yeah, I thought the number was too high for Echevarria. I mean, should he be 75 to 1 maybe? I thought 100 was way too high, and I grabbed it.
If Gerard is, I think he should be. Let's just put it that way.
Right. Yeah.
Damon is a guy that I went ahead and took as a big long shot. I just
good for you. He did great for us last week in cashing a top 20 for me last week and played just beautifully in Mexico. And gosh, I thought long and hard about going back to the well with him this week. And I'm glad you're on him. We'll see if we can team up for a win on him. But eventually I left him off the card.
Yeah, he doesn't have a great history here, but like we said, that's not a big deal. He does have 2 top 10s in 3 events, and that does matter coming in here because he had not been playing very well.
He's been playing. I mean, he's been putting well. He's always been a ball striker. He drives it extremely accurate. Like you say, the only thing kind of going against him here is he doesn't have terrific history, but he's sure the way he's playing right now is exactly what you would want at this course.
Yes. Ryder is the long shot I did not take. I was thinking about it at 110 to 1. He has 3 straight top 25s here with 2 top 10s. So that's as good you're going to get for Sam Ryder, who's 194th in the world. That fits this golf course. And he's made 5 straight cuts with a couple of top 25. So he's playing pretty well too. So yeah, I think he's a no-brainer to throw just a buck or 2 on him for the casual better.
Yeah, no, if I recall, he's been in contention here in the past. I can't say for sure. He was not a guy I looked real long and hard at. He seems to show up just randomly. He's definitely a ball striker. And every now and then at a random event, he's like in second or something and trying to kick the door down and get a victory. And if I recall, it was here before at PGA National. But he was not a guy I paid too much attention to. I'm sorry.
Okay, and then here are some other long shots we have. Your biggest one is Ben Coles. My 2 are the same 2 from last week, and I said, hey, they both made the cut, so why am I jumping off of them at such a big number? And that's Mateo Montecero and Vincent Norman. But you've got Ben Coles here. What's the deal here? Why do you like Coles?
Yeah, he just kind of popped up on a lot of different things I was looking at. He is absolutely of the ball striker mold. Okay, he lives in Ponte Vedra Beach, which is north quite a ways where TPC Sawgrass is, but he's another Florida resident who has a lot of experience on these golf courses, Bermuda grass surfaces, all that type of thing. Deadly accurate off the tee. And he ranks 15th on tour in ball striking. The last 36 rounds, he is 4th in this field for good drives gained and number one in this field for hole proximity from 150 to 175 yards.
Okay.
And he's currently 15th on tour in strokes gained putting. Now he's 200 to 1 for a reason, but I thought he was a pretty good value at 200 to 1. I also played him for a top 20 finish where he was 5.5 to 1. I mean, gosh, this guy finishes 15th or something, and that's a pretty nice payday.
Yeah. Again, this is where these guys are going to come from sometimes at this golf course. So none of these picks should be considered crazy. I'm actually surprised that Grillo is 250 to 1.
Yeah, he was huge. A guy that he made a bunch of sense last week, and he makes a bunch of sense this week. It just feels like, where he really kind of peaked a couple of years ago when he won at Colonial, and it just seems like we haven't ever heard from him again.
Yeah, he hasn't gotten back yet. Yeah.
Right. But, and that's why he didn't make my card last week. And that's really why I didn't take a hard look at him this week. He's had tremendous success here. He's had good success on the correlated courses. It's like turn the clock back 5 years and you'd absolutely be on Emiliano Grillo right here.
So, yep. And by the way, one more player to bring up, and that's Jake Knapp. 4th here last year, but he has played 7 straight events. This is going to be his 8th straight event. Last year when he won Mexico, He had the week off before that. So I know he's fourth. Last year, a lot of people might be looking at him. Big number. He's 80-1. But when a golfer's going into their 8th straight week of playing, I'm sorry, but sooner or later, you're going to get tired.
You know, I got burned on that last week, and I didn't realize that when I was handicapping the field, but that got me with Sam Stevens last week. I think Sam Stevens was playing either his 7th or 8th consecutive week last week, and I think he's in the field again this week, if I'm not mistaken. So I think that's 8 or 9 weeks in a row. I'm definitely not on him this week, but yeah, no, I mean, these guys he is. So yeah, I think he ran out of gas last week because he was so good at Torrey Pines for not only the Farmers, but also the Genesis. And he made all kinds of sense in the stats, but you're not taking into account what's he feeling physically. And yeah, I think he absolutely ran out of gas, and he was a disaster really in Mexico. And, you know, will he have enough in the tank to perform here at even a much more difficult golf course? I stayed away from Sam Stevens, but it's a great point you bring up on Nat. Playing that many weeks in a row, that's hard.
Yep. So there you go. Once again, there are all the picks. And besides our picks, besides Brady's picks, don't forget to check out Brady's preview at golf.com. That should be out by now, right?
Yeah, it probably is. Yeah, I haven't checked. Of course, we've been doing the show here, but yeah, I would imagine it's up at golf.com now.
Yep. So check that out. And then next week, again, we next 2 weeks are going to be as good as it gets in back-to-back weeks for the entire year. We're really looking forward to it. We're going to get all the best players in the world playing. So really I have no idea. Haven't heard anything yet about Xander Schauffele. So maybe no news is bad news as far as that's concerned. But I think everybody else should be there for the players. And a lot of these guys, most of them should be there next week because it's a signature event. So
yeah. And it'll be a similar formula. I tell you, you know, you and I always discuss the correlated courses. I can tell you one of the strongest correlations for next week, the Arnold Palmer Invitational at Bay Hill Club and Lodge. One of the strongest correlated courses will be TPC Scottsdale, where they play the Phoenix Open.
Okay.
And a prime example is a guy that's won twice at each course, a gentleman by the name of Scotty Scheffler. You may have heard of him.
Okay, very nice. Yeah, Scheffler might even be. I mean, I haven't looked lately, but I wonder if Scheffler is just like everybody else, and he also has a volatile record there. But that's something that we'll.
I don't think so. I mean,
he's one of the few that doesn't. That's not a surprise.
Scotty's only been around for 5 years or less, right?
That's true. Yes.
So he hasn't racked up a ton of laps around the track, but I know he's already won at Bay Hill twice and nearly won at Scottsdale 3 years in a row. So they're a big connection with those two. And it's not just Scheffler. There's more people that, you know, other than him, but he's certainly at the top of the list for crossover success between those two golf courses.
All right. So that is going to wrap it up here. Once again, next week, by the way, just quickly looked, and he was 55th in 2022, and then he won in 2023.
Okay.
So there you go. Even Scotty is vulnerable. So we're out of here. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for all of our golf content, as well as we have links in the description of how you can follow Brady to check out his weekly preview articles, of course, his podcasts, and of course, following Brady on X. And then check out all the other handicapping that we have here on the channel, because we have a whole lot more going on this week alone. Horse racing, golf, hockey, NASCAR, college basketball. It's growing. We're having a lot of fun. Who says there's nothing going on in sports when football season's over? For Brady Cannon and Greg DePalma, we'll see you next time.